CPGM.com is the website. Potato General Manager is the YouTube channel. You know it because you are on it. And go ahead and hit that subscribe and that like button and hit me down in the comments section. Let's discuss this mock draft, and all the opinions are welcome, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm here to drop my weekly way too early mock draft. This is CPGM Drew. And just so y'all know, the order is based off the records and then point differential. Y'all already know who the first pick is. Let's not get cute. For this 2020 NFL mock draft, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State. Let's imagine for a moment here, Josh Rosen shows the Finns something, and they decide he's the future. But at the same time, the Finns are still the worst team in football because it's a fire sale over there. We know this. No need for a quarterback, right? So let's go with the best player in the entire draft, Chase Young, who is the type of talent who can change a defense and, for that matter, a team. Elite in every sense of the word, at the edge position, and a possible transcendent type. Just waiting to see him versus better comp this season over there in the Big Ten. We know it's poo-poo over there. All right, next up we have the next New York team in the New York Football Jets. I have them selecting Paulson Adebo, cornerback out of Stanford. Most are going to say he is the best cornerback in the class, and I can't disagree. He can play both man and zone about the same due to his quick twitch movement, come up and stuff you in the run game, has no problem sticking his head in there, ability to hang in the hip pocket of the wide receiver, along with that swag. My man's got a whole lot of swag, and at that position, at cornerback, you got to have that, otherwise you're not going to survive. Jets benching of Tremaine Johnson, and we know he didn't play well last year, need his replacement. You know, in that Greg Williams defense where he's going to throw everything at you, including the kitchen sink, you got to have guys on the outside who can cover on the outside on one-on-one coverage. All right, next up, what would have been the Pittsburgh Steelers here. We have the Miami Dolphins once again. Remember, they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I have the Dolphins taking Henry Ruggs III, wide receiver out of Alabama. Speed. But not only can he run fast, Ruggs III can block with the best of them and has a nasty streak to boot. I asked Dolphin fan, who on the offensive side of the ball puts fear in the hearts of those across from them? Don't worry, I'll wait. All right, next up we have the Washington Redskins, and I have them selecting Andrew Thomas, tackle out of Georgia. He's the best offensive lineman coming out, technically sound when you talk about his hands and his feet, as well as a dude who carries a bottle of nasty with him. No Trent Williams. Let's just do the right thing here. Let's hit the easy button and get his replacement in the door right now. All right, next up we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and I have them selecting Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback out of Alabama. I'm not 100% sure what the hell is wrong with the Bengals defense outside of the second level with all the talent they have on that side of the ball, but I'm going quarterback here. Could you imagine the Bengals offensive line getting healthy and swapping the tackles back over, and Tua throwing the ball to a future Hall of Famer in A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, who looks to come into his own last year, and John Ross, 3 games in to the regular 2019 season, has taken flight. All right. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals. I have them selecting Little Walker, tackle out of Stanford. Those are like two last names, Little and Walker. Still one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Got to protect the franchise in Kyler Murray. What I know about Little Walker, he's always the first out of his stance at the snap. Kick step planted and hands up, delivering a punch. And once he engages, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. At times I saw he was overwhelmed and pushed back, but always managed to recover, adept at getting to and finding his guy at the second level. All right, next up in this 2020 NFL mock draft, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Tristan Wirfs, tackle out of Iowa. Facts. Garrett Bowles ain't it, and frankly, he gonna get somebody hurt, including himself, no less. Wirfs' hands and feet match at the point of attack and is always able to get his punch out consistently over and over on opposing defenders. Not a road grader by any stretch, but one who won't have any problem. It's just a plug-and-play player. All right. Next up, we have the New York Football Giants. Have them selecting Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver out of Alabama. Benny Fowler, Russell Shepard, Cody Lattimore, and Sterling Shepard. Oh, let me not forget the illustrious Cody Core. Any of those scaring any defensive coordinator or any secondary in the league? Probably not. This is the type of receiving core that will allow the defense to dictate rather than allowing the offense to dictate, which is usually the case, right? Jerry Jeudy is the type of receiver who can change this, making things a bit easier for Daniel Jones and allowing Sterling Shepard, if healthy, to be the number 2 and open things up for both Evan Ingram and Saquon, the greatness that is Barkley. Next up on the chopping block, we have the Oakland Raiders, and I have them selecting Bryce Hall, cornerback out of Virginia. Coming to the season, I wasn't sure that the cornerbacks for the Raiders was going to do, and facing the Chiefs 2 weeks ago let me know everything I needed to know, along with the Vikings this past week. The boys need some help. Hall is the best off coverage where he's able to read and react, see ball, go get ball type. All right, next up we have the Cleveland Browns, and I have them selecting Prince Tega Wanagaho. That's a heck of a name, man. Offensive tackle out of Auburn. I don't believe he is handing out too many pancakes due to him normally having to gather his strength after making contact, but he's excellent in space and seeing what is happening in front of him, referring to stunts and games up front. You're not going to fool him. All these weapons and little protection for Baker Mayfield. You got to have a guy who can protect, and Greg Robinson on one side and Wanagaho on the other. All right, next up we have the Atlanta Falcons. I have them selecting Travis Etienne, running back out of Clemson. I was always on the fence about Devontae Freeman, and this year is no different, even with Coleman out the door. Etienne is not my top back coming out at the moment, but that may change here quickly. Explosive in the open field, and as fast and explosive as he is, he's even stronger. He reminds me of AP, the Cyborg, Adrian Peterson in that respect. All right. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have them selecting Alaric Jackson, tackle out of Iowa. DeMar Dotson's replacement, another plug-and-play player from the illustrious football factory that is Iowa. All right, next up, we have the Bolts. We have the Los Angeles Chargers. I have them selecting Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin. May win the Heisman. I don't know. The 2 other quarterbacks might have something to say about that, but we'll see. Of course, this means Melvin Gordon is out in some type of trade. Taylor's very good in small spaces, especially when you're talking about his lateral movement. I saw over and over where he was able to avoid incoming defenders as he received the handoff, much like Singletary out of FAU last year. Special player, Devin Singletary, that is. All right, next up we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I have them selecting Jabari Zuniga, defensive end out of Florida. This is obviously on the assumption that Yannick Ngakoue is not coming back, and Zuniga, being a guy who can play both inside and out and is elite in the pass rush department, is too much to pass up here. Although he is a little light to play on the inside, he can do it and is used in that capacity at Florida on occasion. All right, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, and I have them selecting Kristen Fulton, cornerback out of LSU. With the way the Eagles play defense in the secondary, leaving their safeties and cornerbacks one-on-one constantly, Fulton would fall in line with this, as he is a risk taker, but a guy who you can live with the big play because he hangs in the hip pocket of the receiver. It kind of matches his game, if you will. All right, the Tennessee Titans are next, and I have them selecting Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon. I have yet to see Corey Davis's full potential for a myriad of reasons. So Herbert in, Mariota out. Herbert has a nice quick release, who will hang in the pocket and go through his reads and make the throw. And he also has some athleticism to move around in that pocket, although I know that he looks to stay within the pocket and make a throw down the field versus taking off. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. I have them selecting Grant Dalpit, safety at LSU. Looks as though Cam Newton may miss some significant time So 7 it is. Delpit is one of the special ones. And at this point in the draft, not a guy I'd pass up here. Panthers perimeter corners are set for years to come. But what about a guy who can play inside, the slot, down in the box, play that linebacker / rover position, as some would call it, against tight ends or for run support, or on the back end at free safety. All right, next up we have the New Orleans Saints, and I have them selecting C.D. Lamb, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. I know the law firm of Breeze, Kamara, and Thomas are a top 5 firm in the league, but they need to go ahead and add a new named partner to the letterhead, and that is Lamb. Lamb answers this as a player who plays above the rim and can catch with bodies around him. A guy who Breeze can just throw the ball up to, he can go up and get it, and he has a little bit of wiggle and is somewhat of a playmaker with the ball in his hands. All right, next up we have the Seattle Seahawks, and I have them selecting Boise State defensive end outside linebacker Curtis Weaver, and he's in a scheme for the Boise State, not sure what their mascot is, for Boise State that does a little too much with Weaver. I prefer him with his hand in the ground so you can see him use his hands, and he's got the dip, and he's got a couple of different moves in his toolbox that he can use along with his strength to come off the edge, and also he can work inside as well, as they do run games or stunt games up front with him and the other defensive linemen there. But for the Seattle Seahawks in a 4-3 defense, I like to see him come off the edge or, at times, do the stunt game inside because he's good with that. All right. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts. I have them selecting A.J. Epinesa, defensive end out of Iowa. Defensively, this team is set at all levels of the defense except for pass rusher. Enter in Epinesa. Epinesa is the type of defensive end who can set the edge with zero issues, stringing things out till he makes the play or till help arrives. This season, I'm looking for him to develop more moves in the pass rush department, but this is another Iowa player coming out who uses his arms well to extend and disengage away from the offensive tackle. All right. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. This was going to be the Houston Texans pick, but we know that they traded away Laramie Tunsil, and thus we have the Miami Dolphins once more, and I have them selecting Tyler Biadaza, center out of Wisconsin. The rebuild continues, as CPGM Drew calls it, the pivot of the offense, that center position, the second most important position on the offensive line. Biadaza is a guy who can get out on screens up the field to the second level of the defense, and a guy who is blocking for the bad man, or that bad man, as Stephen A. Smith would say, Jonathan Taylor. All right, we have the Oakland Raiders, and this should have been the Chicago Bears here, but we know they traded for Khalil Mack, or the Raiders traded away Khalil Mack, and here we are. I have them selecting Laviska Shenault, wide receiver out of Colorado. Gruden normally has a gadget guy, a guy who can develop key plays to get them the ball in space, and Shenault can be that guy and more. He reminds me of a Percy Harvin that can play above the rim, but not quite the speed of a Percy Harvin. All right, next up is an interesting pick here. We have the Minnesota Vikings, and I have them selecting Joe Burrow, quarterback out of LSU. Cousins will be the reason the Vikings fall. When the game lights are on or at its brightest, Cousins is at his worst. We're talking Sunday night football, Thursday night football. We're talking Monday night football. We're talking about a game they have to win. Cousins doesn't seem to show up. I think Cousin is who shows up. Joe Burrow is a calm, cool, collected in the pocket kind of guy who can play both within rhythm and outside of rhythm, accurate, and move within the pocket well, and gives his guys a chance to make a play on the ball, not scared to let it fly. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue to add to that pretty good Baltimore Ravens defense. We're going to add a Derek Brown out of Auburn, defensive end, defensive tackle. Brown is a guy who gets down the line very well and takes up space, as well as takes on consistent double teams, allowing others beside him and behind him to move freely or, one-on-one so they can do some work. In this Ravens defensive scheme, keeping linebackers free and clear to make plays is big, and Brown can do that. Also a guy who can play both inside and out. All right, next up, as y'all can see, I have the Detroit Lions, and I have them selecting Julian Okwara, defensive end out of Notre Dame. And in my estimation, there's another Okwara on the roster in Romeo. I would imagine he's going to take Romeo's spot here, but we'll see. Okwara looks best standing up, has top-of-the-line hand usage and length. As it stands now, I'd like to see him defend the run a little better and fill his pass rush toolbox with a few more tools for the tool shed or toolbox. Buffalo Bills, man, we finally got these guys a weapon, man. I got him T. Higgins, wide receiver out of Clemson. So many teams with really good defenses, but they have suspect quarterbacks or young quarterbacks with no true difference maker, outside of, the at the receiver position to make a play on the ball for those quarterbacks. Big arm QB who needs a guy who can just put it in his area code, Higgins' area code, and go up and get it. We have the Cheeseheads here. We have the Green Bay Packers, and I have them selecting Calvin "The Rock" Morton. Love that name. Out of Oregon, offensive tackle, all hands and feet. Not always the first to deliver the punch, but he mirrors well and able to find the free rusher and push defensive linemen inside to help and get back outside to pick up the free man. He sees the field well. With The Rock Morton, I love that name, y'all. Skill set, he is perfect match for the Green Bay Packers, who probably are not bringing back Brian Bulaga, who is on the last year of a 5-year deal. All right, here we got the replacement for Aqib Talib. Can't pay everybody or continue to pay everybody. For the Los Angeles Rams, I have them selecting C.J. Henderson, cornerback out of Florida. Just like Talib, has size, speed, and finds the ball actively. All right. Looks like we're going to fix the second level, or start to fix the second level of the Chiefs defense. Here I have them selecting Isaiah Simmons, linebacker out of Clemson. Simmons is a guy who is in the mold of the new age linebacker. He can play that sideline game, but also come downhill and do the stack and shed thing. All right, we have the San Francisco 49ers here. I have them selecting Xavier McKinney, safety out of Alabama. Not quite the player Delpit is when you talk about playing back, the free safety role, but is a guy who is more of the downhill type who can also play in the slot. All right. I have the Dallas Cowboys here, and I have them selecting Kenny Willekes, defensive end out of Michigan State, a slim frame pass rusher who has an innate ability to get up and around said tackle using hands and speed in concert. It's at times a beautiful thing to watch, pairing another edge rusher with the likes of DeMarcus Lawrence, who is a top 5 edge player in the league, maybe a top 3, who knows. But pairing him in that, putting him in that Rob Marinelli defense with that young secondary. I mean, 2 bookends and then a young secondary who's doing work out there. This looks to be a match made in heaven here. All right, next up we have the New England Patriots. Have them selecting Raekwon Davis out of Alabama, defensive tackle. Davis is a guy in the Bama defense who is doing all the dirty work, taking on plenty of double teams from the end spot, no less. A main cog that keeps those linebackers behind him and alongside him clean and clear of opposing offensive linemen so they can make a play or two. The manner in which New England plays defense is predicated all 11 versus the front 4 or front 7 approach by other teams. All right, guys. That will do it for my way too early 2020 NFL mock draft. Let me know how you feel about it. Who did I miss? Who got misplaced? Who is higher than who shouldn't be in the first round? Let me know. What are your opinions on specific players and fits with teams? Just hit me down in the comment section, and also like, subscribe, and also share the video, man. Don't be selfish.
In the building.